According to this Wikipedia entry, incarnation literally means embodied in flesh or taking on flesh. It refers to the conception and birth of a sentient being who is a material manifestation of an entity, God, or force whose original nature is immaterial. The noun incarnation derives from the ecclesiastical Latin verb incarno, itself derived from the prefix in and caro, meaning flesh. Incarnation therefore means to make into flesh, or in the passive, to be made flesh. Its usage can be traced back to the 12th century, when it was first used to articulate the Christian doctrine of the mystery of the Incarnation. We are going to use the word incarnation in its generic sense here. So in case you are a Christian, please do not confuse our usage with the Christian doctrine of the mystery of the Incarnation. We will go back to the beginning and approach the matter from a logical and scientific perspective, and the conclusion may help you demystify your so-called mystery. If we begin from the premise that to incarnate means an immaterial being becoming flesh in a sentient body, then from first principles, the birth of every human is an incarnation. The creation story in the book of Genesis tells us that through the movement of His Spirit, the Word, God created the heavens and the earth. Out of the dust of the earth, He molded a body. Then He breathed Himself into that body, and that body became a living soul. And it is this living soul that we call man. Man is, therefore, God Himself that has stepped down into a body of flesh for the purpose of experiencing life on this space-time arena called creation. The conditioning of the God nature or spirit through the space-time bodily experience creates the soul. Spirit becomes a soul by falling into materiality, which is the conditioned state of being you were born into. The drama of life is the drama of redemption, in which this fallen soul finds its way back to its original essence through the awakening of consciousness. It becomes apparent that each time a child is conceived in a woman's womb, the incarnation is occurring. It becomes clear to us that the incarnation is actually the fall. The myth about Adam, Eve, the serpent, and the forbidden fruit is just what it is, a myth. It is an imagery that the Hebrew mystics constructed as a means of explaining this mystery of creation to the people of old. Unfortunately, as it is with most myths, legends, allegories, personifications, and symbols, we have mistaken the vehicle of truth for the truth itself. God creates man by becoming man, because there is nothing outside of God that He can use to create. When God becomes flesh, we have an incarnation. The process of descending into flesh and being trapped in space-time conditioning is called the fall. Thus, it is not man that fell. It is God that fell into the form called man. The fall is not a sin that someone committed, as theologians will have us believe. This theological misrepresentation is a basis of the guilt and fear that religion has cast humans into. And as you may already know, it is this guilt and fear that makes the creeds, dogmas, rituals, and sacraments indispensable and thus keeps the churches in business. I do not blame the ancient theologians because they simply did not know enough. They were limited to the level of understanding they had in their day. The challenge of our time is whether we can free ourselves from the chains that these false beliefs have imprisoned us in for millennia. The fall is the creation of the human soul, within which is encoded the eternal Logos. The ripe fruit falls from the tree and suffers temporary separation from its parent tree. Then by dying to its old self, this fruit activates the essence of the parent tree that is encoded within itself, germinates and flourishes as an individualized version of the true tree from which it fell. The one essence multiplying itself into infinite individualities and blossoming its fullness through each individuality is the meaning of glory, and glory is the purpose of life. In the same way, man is the seed that falls out of God into the Eden of creation. Man is a soul in which is encoded the eternal Logos. The body is just a biological spaceship that this soul uses to navigate this planetary adventure. The destiny of man is to redeem himself and ascend back into the glory from which he came. Thus, redemption happens when he dies to the conditioned self, resurrects the eternal Logos within, and flourishes as the God-man, or Christed one. I have mentioned the redemption here so as to immediately dispel the mistaken conclusion that some people fall into when they say that if God became you, it means that you are God. This is only a half-truth, because as I have shown you, God became you by falling into the material state, the incarnate soul. Therefore, you can become God only by ascending back into the glory from which you came. As the saying goes, God became man that man may become God. The incarnation and the resurrection, or the fall and the redemption, are therefore inseparable. Together, they make up the cycle of life. In our next lesson, we will go deeper into the meaning of the redemption, also known as the resurrection or transformation or spiritual birth, and how it unfolds in you. The central message of today's lesson is that the incarnation is not a theological mystery. It is a practical and logical principle that unfolds in every human. The pure essence of life, which we call God, descended into the manifestation known as man for the purpose of experiencing his infinite divine nature on this space-time plane he created. In the process of that descent or fall, this pure spirit became conditioned as a soul. Your soul, also known as your natural man, is personified in Scripture as Adam, the man from the earth. In a previous lesson, I went into detail about the 7 mechanisms of conditioning: pre-genetic selection, genetic selection, epigenetic control, astrological priming, childhood programming, cultural programming, and auto-suggestive programming. I recommend that you look for this lesson and study it again so that you can understand the mechanism by which the soul is created. The purpose of life is for this conditioned soul to be transformed into the awakened soul, personified in Scripture as Jesus Christ, or the Son of God. It is when this divine nature awakens in you that you become fully you. And it is when you become fully you that your life becomes the spontaneous expression of that state known as paradise. All the other things you call success, and all the other ways through which you seek success, boil down to going around in circles in the wilderness of life, like the ancient people of Israel did. You cannot receive your inheritance unless you enter your promised land. To enter your promised land, that is your sublime self, you must first leave the Egypt or natural self in which you have been enslaved. You are the incarnation of God, but you are a living soul experiencing the fallen or conditioned state. Fear, worry, guilt, confusion, struggle, and pain are the natural experiences of the conditioned state. As long as you are dwelling in the conditioned state, no amount of money, pleasure, power, education, change of environment, change of jobs, change of relationships, or religion can bring you peace. The fallen soul is always at war with itself and with others. As we have seen, this living soul is not your true identity, but the seed out of which your true identity is to be born. Your destiny is to resurrect out of this conditioned state into the glorious state in which you are a living spirit, or the God-man. It is the attainment of this sublime state that constitutes true success. I am GodfreyEsoh, and this is Spiritual Engineering.